there, it's Natasha, and thank you so much for joining me today. So I purchased some of these Pixie powders or Shimmer powders or explosion powders, whatever you would like to call them. I purchased some of these a little while ago, and I did end up doing a couple of videos on these, and I just wanted to find out a few more ways that we can use these. So I do have a couple of brands here. There's a couple that are from Nuvo, and then there's a couple that are from Cosmic Shimmer. If I'm honest, I prefer the Cosmic Shimmer ones. I find that they are kind of more pigmented and they kind of keep to more of a color scheme within each powder. But my personal opinion, and there are lots and lots of companies that do these, definitely just not these two. So you may have some of these in your stash, and these three pieces here are just kind of some of the backgrounds that I had created using these shimmer powders. Now I have a piece of acetate here. This just happens to be the Hero Arts one, and I think this is a 5 by 6 inch sheet of acetate. I'm just going to put those scraps back in there, but I want to show you a really cool technique, and I have a few of these techniques coming up that I'm going to kind of try, just something a little bit different, but I know it's a little bit hard to see. I'm going to put a piece of paper under here soon, but we are going to use some texture paste. Now it is important that this is the transparent texture paste. It doesn't so much as matter if it's the matte or the glossy version, but it is going to dry completely clear. Then I am going to pop a stencil down on top of my acetate, and then I have had this one for a really long time. I don't know if you can still buy this brand. I think this is the Ranger one, but they last a really long time, and this is probably not one that I use all that often, the transparent one, but it is really good for techniques like this. I'm going to put a little bit down on top of my stencil, and then just to get some really nice even coverage, I did decide to use an old, this is an Airpoints card, but any sort of gift card or old credit card, and that will spread it nice and evenly over my stencil and over my acetate. Now you'll notice that I actually don't spread it right down to the bottom of the acetate. That's okay because I'm going to be using pretty much this whole portion, but I will cut a little bit off the side, so I'm not worried about getting it absolutely perfect. The 5 by 6 inch size of the acetate underneath is bigger than I need for my card anyway. And you can use this technique on lots of different, you could create so many different ones of this. So, and kind of use them in lots of different ways on cards. So I'm just showing you one way today. Once I have a nice even layer, I'm going to take a couple of these. This is the Aubergine Dream and Burnt Orange. And usually I would suggest not putting purple and orange together because they would naturally make mud. So that's why I chose these two, to show you guys that actually you can really use some really odd combinations and they look gorgeous. You can also go to town and absolutely put on 4 or 5 different powders. I don't own a whole lot of them, but they last forever. I have been using these a lot, and they are still filled right up to the top. So that is really good to know that I'm getting good value for money, and it's not kind of shaking half a jar out when I put lots of powder here on top of my stencil. So I've left my stencil down on the acetate, and then I've put down what I think is about enough powder. Then I have my spray bottle here. There is just plain water. I'm going to give this a couple of sprays just so it activates the powder, but I really don't want too much water on top of there. If you would like to add more powder, then go for gold. This is a good time to do it. So I'm adding a little bit more. I'm going to add a tiny bit more water to activate that, but not too much. And then here's the part that's a little bit important. You want to wait about 2 minutes or so just to let this kind of set in place. You do not want to leave it long enough that your texture paste is going to dry on your stencil. That would not be good, and it would ruin your stencil. But I did edit out a little bit of the time there because obviously you're not going to sit for 2 minutes watching this. Then lift your stencil straight off, and you have this kind of pattern here, and it looks okay as at the moment. You can see I didn't even get my shimmer powders all the way down to the bottom of my texture paste. Don't worry about that either. As I said, we're only going to be using kind of the most of this, but not all of it, so I can cut some bits off the side. Don't tip it around too much because obviously there's still lots of liquid sitting on top of that. And because this has the texture paste on it, it does make quite a good print. If you want to turn this around and then gently either push like a little tool into it or take a little piece of paper and gently pat on the back side of this, you don't want to kind of go rubbing over it really hard because then you will squish the product out the side and it won't be quite as crisp. But gently take a little piece of paper and just kind of push over it really gently, and then take off your stencil again, and you get not a perfect print, don't get me wrong, but it is a really nice print. And if you did a bigger section as well, that could be a really cool background for another card. And of course, because we use the shimmer powders, it's really shimmery and it dries even more shimmery. So that is another fun technique so that you don't waste what's on top of the stencil as well. Make sure you clean off your stencil and all of your little bits and pieces because you don't want that texture paste drying on there. Now, with the magic of editing, here it is all nice and dry, and it's kind of much easier to see if I put a white piece of paper underneath there. So you can see that the purples and the oranges did not make mud at all. And here is the kind of right side of the acetate. So this is the acetate with the product underneath, and that is the side that we're going to be using today. The other side does look really pretty as well, I must admit, but it's the side with the acetate face up that we're going to be using. Now, to turn this into a card, I'm going to keep this relatively simple. I am taking a couple of these rectangle infinity die frames from Hero Arts, but any frame dies is going to work really well here. Then I'm taking a little bit of low-tack tape. This is the mint tape from scrapbook.com. I pop a little bit down underneath the dies with the cut side facing up, and that way I can get a really nice even frame. I pop it onto some white cardstock, and for now I just want the frame from the outside, but I will use that inside piece of the rectangle as well, just as spare cardstock. And as I said, I'm going to keep this really simple because the color in the background is what we kind of don't want to cover up. So all I'm going to do here is measure how wide my frame is, how big it is, and then that means that I know how much I can cut off my acetate. Now, because we use the texture paste here, all of that beautiful shimmer has been sealed in there, so there is no way that this is going to come off. It doesn't rub off on my fingers at all, but it also is not going to be a worry because it's going to be face down. Remembering that we're going to have the acetate face up, so the powder will essentially be on the underside of that. So once I have cut it, I'm going to check it against my frame and make sure that everything is going to fit with nothing hanging over the edge. And then to attach it to my frame, I'm just going to add some double-sided tape. Now, I always prefer to use double-sided tape when working with acetate. I find that it just adheres much kind of better, and I know that I'm not going to get any smushing or anything out the sides. So a little bit of double-sided tape around the outside, and then that is going to hold down my acetate. Now, there are a couple of different things that you can kind of do from here. One, you could add foam tape to your frame, and that would give it some really nice dimension. And as I said, it kind of creates that shadow underneath. Or you could also just lay it flat and kind of add some double-sided tape back around to the underside of the frame now. But I'm going to pop this up and use these scrapbook.com foam strips, and you can buy these just like a single sheet of them, or you can buy where it has lots in the packet, and I've been really enjoying using these. They're really easy to use and they're kind of the perfect width. They're very skinny, and they're nice and long. I think they're 8 or 9 inches long, which is really good. It means that they can kind of whip around a card without having to use lots and lots of them. So I think this takes about 1.5 or so. So as I said, I chose to pop this up, and I did cut the frame down. It ends up being, I think, about 4 by 5.25 inches, so there is a nice little frame, white kind of frame around the outside of the popped up frame as well. Again, you could definitely choose a different color for the frame, you could have a different background, lots and lots of different options to show off that acetate piece. Now here I just took I think it was 4 or 5 framed of the heart dies, and they all cut. I left them all together so that they all cut out the 4 frames, and I'm actually going to put them right back together again because I really like the texture that it kind of creates. I could have just cut out one of the biggest frames and taken out all of the smaller hearts from the inside of it, but I just kind of like that it creates an extra little bit rather than being just a plain piece of cardstock. So you can definitely skip this step. It's definitely an extra step. I'm putting some double-sided adhesive sheets behind that big heart there, and then that way I can just stick all of the hearts on the inside, and then when I come to pop this down on my card as well, all I have to do is peel off the backing. It's all ready to go. As I said, you don't have to do this step, but it just creates a little more texture and interest to that heart in the middle. Now this is a stamp set that I have truly been loving recently. It's called One Liners, and I think, am I loving this because I am lazy at this, or maybe some people like to call it efficient, because it kind of looks like you have white heat embossed the word onto a black background, but actually I didn't take the effort of going to all that trouble. So I really like these, and it's very nice and simple, and it's a little bit different than just stamping the black onto a white piece of paper too. So I've been really enjoying using these. I do tend to stamp out a couple of them because knowing me, when I go to cut one, if I only stamp one of them, I'll definitely muck it up and have to get out everything all over again. So I like to narrow my chances of that happening, and I just stamp 2 in the beginning. I'm using some nice long bladed scissors so that I can cut around this, and I am going to cut it up, and so it has happy birthday and then to you is going to be on the line beneath. There we go. I can just pull off the backing to that double-sided adhesive, which makes it nice and easy to pop the heart in the center. I'm keeping this pretty clean and simple on the top because the background is definitely the bright and colorful focal feature of this card, and although the sentiment is nice and dark in the middle so it doesn't get hidden anywhere, we can still see all of that beautiful orange and purple. So I hope that you've enjoyed seeing this technique. It is very hard to show you the shimmer of the shimmer powders without catching the glare of the acetate. So you'll just have to trust me that in real life it is very shimmery underneath as well. Please, if you're interested in finding out about any of the supplies that I used in today's video, check out the description box below. That's where they are all listed. Other than that, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!